Former U.S. President Donald Trump arrived in New York City on Monday, walking into Trump Tower ahead of his historic arraignment on Tuesday to face charges stemming from a probe into hush money paid to a porn star before the 2016 election. Security was high outside the Manhattan courthouse, where Trump is likely to be fingerprinted and photographed Tuesday afternoon. At a news conference, New York City Mayor Eric Adams warned protesters to behave themselves or face the consequences.
While there may be some rabble-rousers thinking about coming to our city tomorrow, our message is clear and simple. Control yourselves. New York City is our home, not a playground for your misplaced anger. As always, we will not allow violence or vandalism of any kind. And if one is caught participating in any act of violence, they will be arrested and held accountable, no matter who you are.
There he is! Trump left his Florida home midday Monday to cheering supporters as his motorcade drove by to take him to his private plane at the airport, which flew him to New York. The Republican, who's seeking to regain the presidency in 2024, is the first sitting or former U.S. president to face criminal charges. A grand jury voted to indict him last week. Trump was due to surrender at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office on Tuesday before appearing before a judge, where he's expected to plead not guilty. The specific charges have yet to be disclosed. Trump has said he's innocent, and his allies have portrayed the charges as politically motivated. The Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, who's leading the prosecution, is a Democrat. Former New York State Deputy Attorney General Danya Perry explains what will likely happen inside the courtroom.
Mr. Trump will be brought to the courthouse on the 15th floor of the criminal court in Manhattan, and he will appear in front of a judge who will then tell him what the charges are against him, ask him how he pleads, and will set, in this case, there will certainly be no bail, and so he will release the former president on his own recognizance and will set some schedule for the next court appearance and potentially for discovery and for motion practice. And that's fairly typical. Of course, in some ways, this is a first of its kind. There will be a Secret Service detail. There will be a lot of security and law enforcement presence to make sure that there is no violence and no disruptions.
Trump is expected to fly back to Florida after Tuesday's arraignment and deliver primetime remarks at his Mar-a-Lago estate.
So here we have it. Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy. Each of these adventurers has their own story, but together they represent our creed, e pluribus unum, out of many, one.
It will be a 4-day journey, going 250,000 miles, continuing to test out every bit of Orion, going around the far side of the moon, heading home, going through the Earth's atmosphere at over 25,000 miles per hour, and splashing down in the Pacific. So, am I excited? Absolutely.
Human spaceflight is like a relay race, and that baton has been passed generation to generation, and from crew member to crew member. From the Gemini, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Soyuz, Skylab, Mir, the Shuttle, International Space Station, commercial crew, and now the Artemis missions. And we understand our role in that. And when we have the privilege of having that baton, we're going to do our best to run a good race to make you proud.
Disney CEO Bob Iger fired back at Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis on Monday, saying his apparent retaliation against Disney for taking a position on legislation was anti-business. The clash began over Florida's Parental Rights in Education Act, referred to by opponents as the Don't Say Gay bill that restricts classroom discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity.
We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations.
Disney say gay, we won't go away.
After initially trying to stay neutral, Disney opposed the bill. DeSantis and the Florida legislature hit back with a move to eliminate the virtual autonomy Disney held over 24,000 acres of land surrounding the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. At the company's annual shareholder meeting Monday, Iger said it appeared DeSantis, quote, decided to retaliate against us, punishing the company for exercising a constitutional right. He noted that Disney employs 75,000 people in Florida and will welcome 50 million visitors to Disney World this year. In February, Florida passed a bill that granted DeSantis effective control of a board that oversees development in Disney's special tax district, and the governor appointed a board of overseers.
There's a new sheriff in town. We've taken away their self-governing status. There's a lot of little back and forth going on now with the state taking control, but rest assured, you ain't seen nothing yet. There's more to come in that regard.
But before the takeover by DeSantis appointees, Disney pushed through changes to limit the board's power. And on Monday, DeSantis asked Florida's Inspector General to investigate what he described as a last-minute attempt by Disney and the outgoing board to usurp the authority of the new board.
France is living through another period of street protests and widespread strikes, in particular against President Emmanuel Macron's plan to raise the retirement age. Planes, trains, and buses came to a standstill as Germany endured its largest day in decades of industrial action in March. Higher food and energy prices have contributed to rampant inflation and continue to dent living standards in Europe as elsewhere, most especially for the lowest paid, according to Gregory Claeys from the Brussels-based economic think tank Bruegel.
If you're poor, generally the inflation that you face, the level of inflation that you face is actually higher because you spend more of your money on things that have increased a lot, like energy, food, etc.
The recent protests suggest many European workers have decided to fight to maintain their share of a shrinking economic pie. Their governments are already dealing with a number of challenges, including aging populations, tackling climate change, the Ukraine conflict, and ending their over-reliance on Russian energy. All of that makes them less willing to grant hefty public sector pay increases. But unions insist Europe still generates enough wealth to stop wages from sliding behind inflation. Owen Tudor is deputy head of the International Trade Union Confederation based in Brussels.
Wages are not keeping pace with either productivity or the cost of living, and so a number of workers are taking action. They're coming off the back of the pandemic, they're facing climate emergency and so on. So there are a lot of concerns in the labour market at the moment that are facing working people.
Securing a solid pay raise has proved harder for workers in Europe than in the US, where post-lockdown labor shortages gave workers extra leverage. Gregory Claeys from Bruegel again.
And so it's more difficult, I don't know, for an Italian worker or a Spanish worker or a Greek worker to ask for wage raise when there is still like some unemployed people. While in the US, it's not the case. In the US, workers have increased their bargaining power, while this is not yet the case in Europe, so it manifests itself through this social unrest.
The bump in European corporate profits and shareholder gains has also aggravated a sense of inequality. Union advocates like Owen Tudor say Europe's besieged governments could easily rebalance things through what might be politically unpopular steps, like raising taxes for the wealthy.
Governments still seem to be trapped in the ideology that they can't raise taxes significantly, and therefore they've imposed on themselves an artificial restriction on their ability to pay higher wages, and there is still a concern in some political circles about the level of public expenditure, the level of taxes, the level of public services. So we're still seeing attempts to drive down the social wage. This in particular, for instance, in terms of France, is about the pension entitlements. France is a rich country, and as a result of the productivity gains over the last 10 years, is easily able to maintain its pension arrangements at their current level without having to do what President Macron is attempting to do. And that doubles the anger among working people.
And that could mean more strikes in Germany and protests and walkouts in France.